Oh,
How are you?
I'm well, thank you. How are you?
I'm doing well also. Happy
Good.
Friday to you.
Happy Friday.
Thank you so much for making time to talk with me.
Oh, thank you.
I really appreciate it. I'm sure Mark gave you a little bit of background, but we're putting together this story for our special A Turning Point. We do one of these each month, kind of looking at the social awareness and the reckoning that has happened in the past year. And each one sort of has a theme of different sorts and is made up of a group of stories. And so next Thursday, we're kind of looking at, of course, it's Black History Month, but we're looking at facing history, just what it has accomplished, how long it's been here in Cleveland, what it's been doing, and how it can continue to sort of spread its message to new groups, new schools, new students, and the difference it's made in those lives. And so in talking to Mark initially, it was like, we really got to hear from some teachers who know the program and who feel like it's helped them in some way, and hear kind of that perspective. So that's why he reached out to you on our behalf, and that's just all we hope to accomplish today, I guess.
That's great. So it will air on Thursday, or is it for the website?
It will air on Thursday at 7 p.m.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, on
Okay.
Channel 3. And then we'll put it on the website as well, and I can make sure to send you the link and everything in case you miss it live. But
Oh, terrific.
yeah, so little shout outs for Laurel in there, and yeah, it'll be good. So this part of this is just you and I, obviously, and if you need to start over, if I ask you a question that doesn't make sense and you want me to rephrase, please just say so. We will
Great.
just be pulling a couple sound bites from this that go into this story. The whole story will be like 3 minutes long. So
Wonderful. Would it be possible for you to send me the recording of our time together here?
yeah, I can do that.
Thank
Sure,
you.
absolutely. Okay, so I am gonna start recording now just so that I have this. And the first thing I'll have you do is just say and spell your name, and then also give us your titles, and this just to make sure everybody here at the station gets it right.
Great. My name is Kimberley Butler. It's spelled Kimberley Butler, and I am a teacher in the upper school at Laurel in the English department, and I also serve as Laurel's Facing History in Ourselves liaison.
So in the upper school, meaning you teach students from what grades?
Grades 9 to 12.
Okay. So let's talk about first how you became aware of facing history in ourselves.
Wonderful. Well, I have been at Laurel for 15 years, and it was the very end of the semester after my first year where I was offered the opportunity by the then Board of Trustees Chair, Ann Juster, to attend a professional development workshop, The Holocaust and Human Behavior. And it was a transformative experience for me as an educator. It was a week-long seminar taught at John Carroll University, and by the end of the first day, I was hooked. It is not just the content and the gravity and the power of looking closely at the Holocaust and the events that led up to it, but it was really looking at the role of everyday humans and how they played in the genesis and the fallout even from that tragedy, from that, that attempted genocide, that really grabbed me. The idea that people are not inherently evil, that we make choices that in turn make history, which is Facing History's motto, but to look at it from that perspective and to realize that everyday people can play a crucial role in the either positive or, in that case, deeply negative historical events really made me feel more agency that I personally have in making choices that make history. But the fact that that can be taught at a level from students as young as middle school all the way up gave me hope that we can build a better society and better world through education. And I think Facing History continually gives us evidence of that.
So where did you take that passion? You said you were hooked from day one. How did you kind of say, okay, I gotta capitalize on this and bring it back to my classroom?
I immediately met with the rest of my department and my head of school, Ann Klotz, who had also taken Facing History professional development workshops, teacher seminars, I believe they're called. And I think that's what their formal title is. And we decided to initially do some of the practices in that particular workshop, Holocaust and Human Behavior, with our ninth grade students. So the Facing History scope and sequence of their curricular design begins with a unit called The Individual and Society. And the Individual and Society begins with students examining their own identity, the various aspects of their identity that defines how they move through the world and how in turn the world treats them. And the reason why it became such a useful teaching tool for our ninth graders, and we do it in other grades as well, is because the individual and society really centers the student. And so Facing History's approach that the student herself, in the case of Laurel, is the architect of her own destiny and has the power to make choices that will in turn make history, braids really beautifully with our pedagogical approach at Laurel. So at Laurel, we place a very strong emphasis on student-centered learning, on individualized learning pathways for our students, and student ownership of their learning. So by centering the student with those materials as we educate, it really reinforms our own best practices as a faculty.
When I was talking with Mark yesterday, he was saying, again, the name and ourselves is facing ourselves is really an important part of this process. And as you just talked about, it's kind of where it all starts. Why do you feel like, or is there something special about the age group of students that are in high school, that are in adolescence, that are going through a lot of that sort of identity crisis at times anyway, that this really helps them understand maybe the potential weight of the decisions they make?
Yes, I think it does help them understand the potential weight of it, but in a very good and educative and powerful way. I can give you an anecdote. I was teaching, I took several other Facing History teacher workshops after the Holocaust and Human Behavior. And one of the ones I took was on race and membership. And I learned a unit about Native American boarding schools. So I took those materials and I brought them back to the ninth grade. At the time, I was leading seminars for the entire ninth grade class. And I remember specifically one student, after learning about Native American boarding schools and their purpose of stripping peoples of their culture, she was enraged. But she was also very empowered and inspired. And she raised her hand at the end of the seminar and said, "Why aren't we being taught this?" And I said, "Well, you are now." But what's more important, I think, is that exposing students to things with such gravity and, really difficult to process and dwell in histories, they tend to gain a sense of responsibility about the world that they want to make, about the world that they want to be in, and their potential for having a role in making it a better world, which is so useful to us at Laurel because our motto is, our mission is to inspire each girl to fulfill her promise and better the world. So it really reinforces what we try to do as educators at Laurel. And that synthesis guides so much of our teaching practices as much as the content that we choose to include in our curriculum.
You spoke to it a bit there, but Facing History looks a lot at race and equity at the moment now. They have a lot of various sources of their curriculum, and also, from my understanding from speaking with Mark, lesson plans, all sorts of things that you can sort of bring and implement as a teacher.
Yeah.
How different is this than the curriculum that's out there than most of, let's say, the history classes or that people my age and older would remember from school?
Well, Laurel is, at essence, a college preparatory school, and we place a huge emphasis on academic rigor. Can I say that again?
Yeah, absolutely.
Laurel is a college preparatory school. And so necessarily we have an emphasis on academic rigor. There's a certain amount of content that we need to deliver to our students. What's great about the Facing History curriculum is that it's so adaptable. So we're able to take, let's say, a lesson plan or a primary source that we have access to as Facing History educators and take it as far as we would like to with our own students. So because of the adaptability of the content that Facing History provides, it's really suitable for all types of schools, from public to parochial to independent, like Laurel.
How many questions are you getting this year? I mean, I think there's several separate events, but also just a general sense of reckoning. But I know Mark and I spoke about the insurrection, the Black Lives Matter marches we saw over the summer, of course, the death of George Floyd. How are you speaking with students about those things right now?
Laurel, we are in the midst of an endeavor to become an anti-racist institution. So along with the content that we're looking very closely at as we design our curricula for next year, and the approaches that we wish to take, along even with our hiring practices, we are making a very intentional, concerted drive to address the inequities in our systems and bring those to light for students so that they can examine them, see where they fit into the solving of the problems, seeing ways that we can counsel them and speak with them in order for them to be able to get their minds around these tragedies, but also to inspire them to be agents of action in finding their voices to combat the discrepancies that have perpetuated state-sponsored murder, for instance, as you mentioned, George Floyd. So by providing them with spaces that are safe but brave spaces to speak freely, we've been having lots of signature programming and extracurricular meetings and activities with students. We also have a very focused diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging program that very deliberately, on a weekly basis, they meet with students to examine these kinds of issues and to look at materials and provide resources for our students to process and help join the cause for becoming not only an anti-racist institution like Laurel intends to be, but also to take these tools beyond Laurel. And to be inspired to enact even greater change in the larger communities they'll be in higher education and in the world.
To be upstanders instead of bystanders.
Yeah. Exactly.
Are you, I think sometimes we put so much of our hopes and faith for a better society onto that next generation, but as you're with them every day, do you feel like they've earned it, that we can count on them to help the rest of us sort of write the course?
Absolutely. Every day I am impressed and enthused and sometimes astonished by my students' capability to address these issues. I have not hope in the next generation, but certainty that they are going to be the brave agents of change that this world so desires and deserves. They're phenomenal. They're open-minded, they're curious, they're oftentimes, as I mentioned in my anecdote earlier, enraged, but they are enraged in a generative way. They intend to do something with their anger and their disgust when they look at inequities in our system. It is an actionable, self-actualized way that they are possessed and inspired to move forward.
Sounds so powerful to see, for sure.
It is.
Obviously, I can tell just from your passion around it, the fact that you are a cheerleader for Facing History and ourselves, that you've already spoken with other educators about this program and encouraged them to do what you did, so many years ago when you were first introduced. But if you were speaking to a teacher right now, or if a teacher was going to see our interview here, why would you tell them to look toward these resources?
Well, one of the great things about participating in a Facing History and Ourselves Teachers Workshop is that you have unlimited access to their vast library of resources, from primary historical resources to and documents to streaming videos to physical materials that they mail to you if you just put in a request. So there's that unlimited access to material if you're developing a course around any kind of idea related to creating greater equity or examining historical events or figures with a critical eye in order to expose students to the realities of the past and inspire them hopefully to make a better future. So there's that. But Facing History also provides you with a pedagogical approach. I mentioned the scope and sequence earlier, which starts with the individual and society, and then ends with the unit of choosing to participate. So I think that that's just an approach that is useful for any type of educator, to begin with that student-centered approach and then to broaden their perspective, and then finally to teach them and empower them to act, to participate, as you mentioned before, to become upstanders. So from an educational, philosophical perspective, it, I think, vibes with everything we're trying to do as educators. And then from a curricular perspective, it provides us with the tools that we need to get the message across.
That is one good organization for sure to do all of those things. But what am I not asking you that's important? Anything?
Let me see. I had some notes here. Not really. I think that we just about covered it. Your questions were so apt for the directions and all the thoughts that I've been having over the last couple of days. So.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I think again, I don't want to take up too much of your time because I appreciate you giving it to us, but I think just you jump right off the screen with the passion that you obviously bring to the classroom for these things, and just again, the empowerment. I think I can't imagine exactly being a teacher, but I think if I was, I would want to know that there was something like this out there for me to help me, kind of chart these waters with my students in an organized and educated way.
Well, as a journalist, you are, for all intents and purposes, an educator.
In a way.
You may have a bigger classroom than I do. But yeah, I think that,
more unruly students. That's
perhaps, right.
Well, I really thank you again, Kimberly, or Mrs. Butler, maybe I should be calling you. But we will make sure that I've got this recording here. I'm back to my stop.